You're listening to the OCD Stories podcast, hosted by me, Stuart Ralph. The OCD Stories is a podcast dedicated to raising awareness and understanding around obsessive-compulsive symptoms. I do this through interviewing inspired therapists, psychologists, and people who have experienced OCD. Welcome to the OCD Stories. And welcome to episode 407 of the podcast. And in this one, I got back on a good friend and fellow therapist in Kimberley Quinlan. Kim is a licensed marriage and family therapist who treats people with OCD and related disorders, eating disorders, and body-focused repetitive disorders. She also runs her own podcast called Your Anxiety Toolkit. Now, in this one, we talk about meditation. What is it? How can it be useful? We discuss some of the problems people face with OCD and anxiety when trying to meditate. We talk a bit about self-compassion and breath work. Kim guides us through a meditation. We discuss her new meditation vault and much, much more. And thank you to NoCD for supporting the podcast. NoCD offers effective and convenient therapy available in the US and outside the US. To find out more about NoCD, their therapy plans, if they currently take your insurance, or to download their free app, head to go.treatmyocd.com/theOCD stories, or the link will be in the episode description. Thank you to all of our patrons for supporting our work. To sign up to our Patreon and to check out the other benefits you'll receive as a patron, please see the link in the show notes. So thank you to Kim for coming on again. It's always a pleasure to talk with her, and I love the exercise. And of course, thank you to you guys for listening. As always, it means a lot. And without further ado, here is Kim. Welcome back to the podcast, Kim.
Thank you. I'm happy to be here.
Yeah, it's good to have you on. And what's new with you? It's been obviously not long since we've spoke, but long since you've been on the podcast. So what's the update really since that time?
Oh, what's the update? It's a lot of the same, but all good stuff. Loving, really deep diving into more mindful for myself personally, more mindfulness, a lot more self-compassion. I've ridden some big waves of difficult seasons probably since I've been on, and even though they're really not fun and it's really, really hard, I always find I come out of them feeling a little stronger, and particularly when I've got those skills. So, that's what's up with me.
Good. I'm glad. And how's the camper van?
Oh, my camp van is amazing. For those of you who don't know, I bought a 1985 Westfalia Volkswagen. It has 195,000 miles on it. That's actual accurate. And it's literally my favorite thing. For those of you who don't know, I live in Los Angeles, where everyone has a Mercedes-Benz and a BMW and a Tesla. And I have my van, and I feel like I'm the luckiest girl in the world.
And do you work from there at times?
That is what is predominantly for. I love working from there. The minute I'm in there, it's like a deep breath of fresh air. And the whole vibe of my work changes when I work from there. So yes, I don't see clients from there because it does pose a confidential risk, but I do all my administration from there, yes.
Yeah, and I've seen obviously a lot of your Instagram videos have been there recently.
Yeah.
Cool.
It's my favorite place to be.
Yeah, understand what we're talking about. You can head to Kim's Instagram. So today we're going to talk about meditation. Obviously specifically people with OCD, but let's also include people with anxiety in that, just to broaden it out a bit. Being obviously anxiety, one of the key emotions people with OCD feel. So let's just start very basic. Like, what is meditation? I'm sure everyone's heard of it and have some understanding, but yeah, how would you describe it?
Yeah, so meditation is simply where you put your attention, and a training of where you put your attention. There's no right way to meditate. There's no wrong way to meditate. I think there is a lot of pressure on us to meditate in this peaceful place with our legs crossed and sitting up with your eyes closed. And we've got this idea on it's supposed to look like that, and it can look like that. More formal practices can look like that. But I love helping people bring mindfulness into a practice, like an exercise or a training, through meditation. Meditation is like an opportunity similar to my son, who's 8. He trains in karate, and they practice and they practice and they practice so that they can, hopefully excel and go into a tournament and maybe get a higher belt. We're not doing that with meditation, but meditation is an opportunity to strengthen these sort of recovery tools like mindfulness and compassion in a more formal setting or a sitting position. And that's why it's so great.
Yeah. Thank you. Yeah, I agree. It's interesting what you say about the whole karate thing, because the first thing that came to my mind was, I used the Calm app, and I used to use Headspace before that. And I'm not sure, I'm sure Headspace do the same, but Calm, like they'll say, X amount of days, mindful days, or 20 days. I rarely get 20 days in a row, but 20 days in a row, like you do get these kind of, and that's just, I guess, the tech world trying to gamify it and get you addicted to it in a good way. Getting you addicted might not be the right word, but building that habit of coming back to the app, using it, meditating. So in a way, it's a good use of tech. But I just thought that flashed into my mind, because the goal isn't to get belts and become a black belt in meditation. In some way, the modern tech have tried that to a point.
Yeah. And I don't necessarily even disagree with that. I think that, meditation or even the practice of mindfulness is hard work, right? It's a brave, courageous action. And so I think that any way we can reward ourselves and gamify it and motivate ourselves is great. Because, it does take some courage to sit and bring your attention to your experience and become present. That for anxious folks is, again, a big piece of why I love talking about this. And, you and I had discussed this as a topic, is I think that it is made seem like it's so easy, and it's not, but there are ways to make it easier and ways to make it more doable for those with anxiety.
Yeah, that's a good point. And we're going to get to that. And you've definitely talked about some of the benefits already, but I guess I want to explicitly ask that question of, I guess generally, but also for someone with OCD and anxiety, like what are the benefits of meditating?
Yeah. So number one, it can increase your ability to just be aware of what's going on. So much of recovery for anxiety and OCD is being aware of when you're having an intrusive thought, being aware of when you're engaging in mental rumination or a physical compulsion or any safety behavior that might be a problem. So it does help with that awareness piece, that insight in the moment of what's going on. In addition to that, it helps train us to be able to come back to the present instead of having our attention being on this what if about the future or the past, ruminating about things that we may have done in the past or how we didn't handle things or how things didn't go well. And so it gives us an opportunity to really create a safety of being in the present moment, because there is some safety to that when we can get good at it. Meditation in general, we know research has shown, dozens of meta-analyses that have shown reduction in stress, improved sleep, reduction in anxiety, reduction in depression, better pain management. Again, as I was navigating a pretty serious chronic illness, it was a place where I could actually manage physical pain as well. And it was so helpful because everyone was basically sort of saying to me, like, there's nothing we can do. Like, you just have to ride this out until you start to feel better. So that was incredibly helpful. We also know that meditation can be a window into the practice of self-compassion as well, because so much of anxiety and so much of depression and OCD comes with shame and guilt and uncertainty and doubt. And it does help us navigate these very, very strong emotions. It's a skill for life. It's something that I think everyone can benefit from, particularly when we take away the pressure of it being this perfect formal act.
Yeah, good point. Good point. And I guess today, is it worth clarifying that we are specifically talking about meditation and not mindfulness?
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Yeah. Cool.
Yeah.
All right. Cool. And just for anyone, I guess I'm aware of that. Mindfulness is just the act of being mindful anywhere, anytime, washing the dishes, noticing, the water hit the plate, the soap, etc. Walking, being mindful. As meditation, we're talking about mainly sitting. Is that correct?
Doesn't have to be.
Okay.
It can be. So one thing to know is that meditation can be sitting and is most commonly sitting. You can do it laying down. You can do it leaning up against something. Another very, very helpful practice is to do it while walking, So a walking meditation. But as you mentioned, meditation can be implemented for a minute while you wash the dishes or while you fold the laundry as well. Again, depending on where your attention is being grounded.
Yeah, that's interesting. So yeah, because I always see the two kind of separate, but here you're almost saying where I was referring to mindfulness, that is meditation.
Mindfulness can, yeah. So let's sort of differentiate. And again, I also want to note there are different ways in which people understand this. So I'm not going to say I'm the only way of explaining this, but mindfulness is being in present while being non-judgmental and being willing and to be in that experience. I sort of see meditation. There are mindfulness meditations, but there are other meditations as well, where it's really about having a focal point and bringing your attention back to that one focal point. You could also have guided meditations where they take you for this imagery walk into a forest, and that could be the focus as well. So, again, they're so similar, but mindfulness meditation is a form of meditation. Yes.
Oh, okay. Thank you for that clarification. So I guess before we get into what does it look like, practicalities of it, and maybe a demonstration, it will be good to think about the blocks. So the resistances, I've heard time and time and again, some people with OCD that do meditation find it very helpful, and some are like, I did it and it was horrible. I was just alone with my thoughts for 5, 10, 20 minutes. It was torturous. And so that's obviously one block to meditation. But what are some of the others you've heard?
Yeah. The main reason that I wanted to talk about this is so many of the meditations on these really wonderful apps that are available to us, the guided meditations talk about skills that are wonderful for most of the population, but for folks with OCD can become quite compulsive, or can become really frustrating. So terms like just let go of your anxiety. That is incredibly hard for someone who has OCD. And so, in fact, some would say impossible to just let go. If you'd already let go, if it was that easy, you would have done it already and you would be recovered. So I think that a lot of what they hear in meditations, like imagine your anxiety floating off into the sky and it's going and it's going. I'm giving an example, and it's as far as it can be, and then it's gone and you're anxiety free. Or you're doing a meditation where they're saying, just relax your body, relax, relax, relax. But the person with OCD is trying so hard, and it's just physically not possible for them because of the way that their brain functions with these repetitive, intrusive thoughts. So one of the main blocks is, in fact, how some of it is delivered. And when I talk about OCD, I try to say, meditation can be OCD informed, meaning we can use different language, doing the same thing, having the same practice, but having the language be in a way that doesn't increase frustration and doesn't make them feel like they're supposed to be able to just drop their intrusive thoughts and their anxiety and their uncertainty. So I think that one of the biggest blocks is the way in which it's delivered. And once we know that now, and hopefully I can explain how to get around that, then they can go into having a practice where they're aware of what will most likely come up in meditation. The biggest block that I see with my patients is they're doing the meditation, but the intrusive thought keeps returning. And they go back to their focal point, whether that be their breath or something they're holding or the sound of a bell or whatever it may be. And then the intrusive thought comes back and then they're getting frustrated, right? What's going wrong? Why can't I stay focused? What I would encourage, and I'm also already going to a solution, but I'll make this point multiple times, is meditation is a great opportunity for exposure on how to respond to intrusive thoughts. So it's not a problem if your intrusive thought comes back. We can actually use that as an opportunity to keep practicing the skills. Another roadblock that people have is they expect it to be easy. They expect it to be calming. And some meditation is calming, but often meditation is a repetitive it's like doing mental push-ups. It's this strengthening of a muscle, which is we call our brain, which is not natural, not habitual. Our natural brain is always looking for the next thing and where's the next pleasure and how can we avoid discomfort. So meditation is about strengthening and building a discipline in your brain of being able to come back to the present instead of just letting it loop in whatever direction it wants to go in. And then the last one I really think is people often, particularly those with OCD, and do have these repetitive intrusive thoughts or feelings or sensations or urges, they then beat themselves up and have a massive shame wave for the fact that it really isn't natural for them. And that makes sense. And again, it's not natural for anyone, but I think for the folks with OCD, it's particularly hard.
Yeah, really good point. And I think maybe, it's worth acknowledging people without OCD struggle with meditation too, right? So but as you're saying with OCD, it's just even harder. But where you were saying it's interesting about looking at it as meditating is a way, well, it's an exposure effectively, or those thoughts are going to come up because you're not as distracted as if you were watching Netflix or playing a PlayStation or something, or living, pursuing your goals. But yeah, I guess, every time it pops in your head, there's another chance to practice observing the thought, showing it a relevance, noticing it, naming it. Maybe seeing each intrusive thought as a new opportunity.
Yeah. And just like an exposure, when we have intrusive thoughts, this could be for people with health anxiety too, or, phobias, social anxiety as well. When we have those thoughts, our natural inclination, our natural reaction is to run away from them. That's a normal human response, to not want them, to wish that they weren't there. With meditation, you're actually training your brain because you are willingly signing up. You're raising your hand. You're saying, I am going to sit, even if it's for 30 seconds or 10 seconds or however long. You're actually showing your brain a degree of willingness to actually create some space for these thoughts to pop up. And that's really powerful for the brain. Right. I always say to my clients, when you sit down and you willingly say, all right, brain, let's see what you got. Let's have it. I always imagine if your brain was a second character, it would be like, oh, this is new. She's always telling me that these thoughts are bad and wrong and I shouldn't have them. But now she's sort of telling me that she's willing to have them. That's interesting. And your brain starts to understand and learn from that these thoughts aren't particularly bad and wrong, that maybe we don't have to run away from them all the time. Maybe we can have a practice where we can create some safety for them to rise and fall on their own. So I always think it's an opportunity to also retrain your brain's way of interpreting these thoughts.
Yeah, really good point. Really good point. So I think before I ask you any more questions about the practicalities of it, I think it'd be good to maybe do a demonstration or an exercise.
Yeah, sure.
That maybe you could guide the audience and me through.
Sure. So I'm actually going to give you my absolute favorite, most simple form of meditation. And the reason that I'll walk you through this one is, as I said, there are dozens of types of meditation, but I love this. This was the first meditation that I was taught in my Buddhist practice, and it's called a swinging door meditation. It comes from the Zen tradition. But we're not talking religion here. We're just talking about this idea of it being very, very simple. So for those of you who are listening, if you would like, and if you're not driving, I invite you to either follow along or just listen with some curiosity. I'm going to invite you to close your eyes if you are comfortable, or maybe just have a lower gaze down towards the floor. And we're not here to do anything grand. We're not here to be perfect. And as you notice your breath rising in your chest and falling in your chest, I want you to, first of all, give yourself permission that there's no right way to breathe either. Now, if you're someone who has somatic obsessions around the breath, I want to offer for you to do a different attention, which could be on something you're holding or the texture of the fabric that you're in, anything else, because I do know that could become a hyperfixation for you. So for everybody else, we're just going to allow the breath to rise and fall. And as you breathe in, I want you to imagine a door. And as you breathe in, the door swings into the left. And as you breathe out, the door gently swings to the right. Breathing in, the door swings to the left. Breathing out, the door swings to the right at whatever pace that you're breathing. And give yourself some time just to have your attention on this lovely, fluid swinging door that's gently swinging from the left to the right. And as you do this and you put your attention on this, I want you to then be aware of where your brain gets lost. As you bring your attention to the swinging door, your brain might get focused on, am I doing this right? Or am I doing this wrong? Continuing to bring your attention just back to the swinging door. You might even notice that your brain says, this is stupid. This is a waste of my time. And you can gently smile through your eyes and acknowledge that thought. And even then, still bring your attention back to the door swinging to the left as you breathe in, and to the right as you breathe out. As you continue to do this, your brain might even offer you some scary thoughts, and that's totally okay. We're actually going to invite them, acknowledge them, and even then, still bring our attention to the door swinging to the left as you breathe in, and swinging to the right as we breathe out. Just having this repetitive practice of returning back to this gentle, fluid, swinging door. Not beating ourselves up if our brain goes off track. Not scolding ourselves. And doing our best not even to be frustrated, but acknowledging that going off track is actually another opportunity to strengthen our brain's ability to come on back to the present. Take a moment just to continue the practice if you can. Maybe even noticing a trend of what takes you away from your swinging door. And then last of all, as we bring our attention back to our present experience, before you open your eyes, I want you to envision yourself smiling and congratulating yourself for attempting this practice with me here today. Celebrate yourself and this small little muscle that you're beginning to strengthen. And when you're ready, you can come back to me and open your eyes.
I'm back.
You're back.
That was really good. I've never done that one before.
I love a swinging door because, again, you can do it anywhere, anytime, no matter how strong the emotion is. It's something you can access. And you can do 2 or 3 swings if that's all you have the capacity for.
I like the visualization. I've done visualizations in this way before, but not that often. My primary is just focusing on the breath, right? Coming in, coming out. And I think at times, having the visualization, especially if we're really pulled in, might be for some people easier to keep coming back. Whereas like just focusing on the breath, there's no visual component, So I guess what I'm trying to say is, for me, I think I get lost quicker just without a visual component.
Yeah. For me, when I first started this practice, I was suffering from a pretty severe eating disorder. And being in my body is something I actually didn't want to do, right? Being with my breath and bringing attention to my body was actually the biggest trigger. So it was a nice stepping stone, particularly if you're someone who holds a lot of tension in your chest and has a lot of anxiety. That's why I think why it was my favorite and one of the ones that I always rely on is no matter how big the emotion and the sensations are, it's an opportunity just to check in real quick.
Yeah, good point. And, you said at the start about anyone with sort of somatic symptoms, somatic OCD, and in just then, personal experience of having an eating disorder. And I imagine people with panic as well sometimes might get a bit triggered by meditation.
Yeah. Yeah. Again, it's another reason why I'm so passionate about just talking about the meditation piece, because OCD can cling on to anything, right? And it's often, it does cling on to things like body sensations or, again, your experience of anxiety and uncertainty. So, again, that's why I wanted to create a little bit of comfort and baby steps for meditation for those folks particularly.
Mm. And yeah, I'm glad. And something else I noticed, and it might be because what you said earlier about when you were going through your physical illnesses and stuff, and meditation really helped you deal with that a bit more. Because I'm recording this at home today, I don't have my podcast boom that holds the mic, if that's the right word, or podcast art, the mic arm. So I'm holding it right now. And I'm leaning my arm on the table, but it's still heavy and it's hurting a bit. And maybe halfway through that, I was like, okay, I still know I'm holding the mic, but it was almost like my arm had gone numb, and it hadn't, because it's not numb now, but I completely lost that feeling of heaviness. Yeah. So I don't know if it's a small version of what you were talking about, but
100%. When it comes to pain management, we could talk about pain management through the lens of also tolerating uncertainty and anxiety, because that's painful too. It's just a different kind of pain. When we know from research that when we have pain and we put our attention on pain, we often then judge the pain. And when we judge the pain, that actually makes the pain worse. It expands the experience of discomfort. When we're doing a meditation, we're not avoiding the pain, but we're bringing our attention to something else. We're sort of zooming out, which can help with our coping. It can take us away from zooming in on the pain in a way that creates more suffering. So again, you could be using it for actual physical pain, but we can also do that for emotional pain as well.
Yeah, true. Well, like ACT, acceptance and commitment therapy, is used for pain management as well now.
Yeah.
And obviously ACT uses a lot of mindfulness.
For sure.
And compassion focused therapy as soothing rhythmic breathing. And yeah. So it's fascinating. And both of those obviously influenced by meditation and mindfulness to a point.
Yeah. One of the other benefits I didn't bring up is that meditation can really help with insight. When I was very, very ill, I was having these severe migraines where I couldn't really even get up. And a lot of the time in that moment, I would be just laying there going, this sucks. I hate this. This isn't fair. Why is this happening to me? This shouldn't be happening. And I would just be ruminating on that. When I was able to practice the mindfulness and mostly the meditation piece, I was able to see trends in my thinking. And like I said, in the meditation, you can kind of catch, like, it's interesting. That thought seems to just keep coming up. And by that practice, then I could actually see where I was really resisting pain the most in my daily life, which gave me a little insight into like what needs to happen throughout the day, and what therapy I needed to practice on cognitive restructuring, whatever it might be, because the same thoughts were the ones that kept showing up very, very aggressively.
Yeah, that is. So what I want to know is, I'm guessing, I'm just thinking people that have never done it, they might be thinking, okay, that exercise was great. I kind of get an idea what to do. And we will talk about your course in a bit, but how long should I be meditating for? Like, how often should I be meditating? Where should I be meditating? Just any of those real sort of basic questions.
So again, this is where I would introduce sort of the question of self-compassion, which is sort of really first identifying, what do you need? Because I could easily jump on here today and say, you should meditate for 20 minutes a day, twice a day, sitting up straight, and you should do it this way. And the truth is that mightn't be your season right now. You might be in a season of your life where you're working so hard on your OCD and you're in recovery and you've got this therapist and you've got this psychiatrist appointment and you've got these school things happening. I'm going to first offer, what have you got time for? What are you willing to do? And that's enough. That's enough for now. I would personally, if I've fallen off the wagon of meditation, which happens a lot, I usually start back with 2 minutes. It's a very good place to start. 2 minutes. And mainly through the lens of, let's just be curious and see how I go. Let's be curious and see what happens. Let's start with 2 minutes. Let's start with baby steps. Yes, it would be so cool if you stepped into a 20 or 40-minute practice a day. But we know that habits are most consistent when we build them in small baby steps and we add them to routines that are already present. So if you have, think about, what's a routine that's pretty consistent already, and where could you add a meditation practice? Often clients of mine will say, I could probably find 2 or 3 minutes. I've driven to work. I have a little bit of time. Usually I pull out the phone and check Instagram. That would be a great time for me to pull out an app like you mentioned, Calm, Insight Timers, another great one, or whatnot. Or just sit there and do a swinging door, 2 or 3 minutes. So if you can find a habit that's already consistent in a very short period of time, that's great. If you're somebody who needs guidance, though, and accountability, you could find a meditation accountability buddy. If you've got a friend who is kind of curious about it, that could be true. You can set timers on your phone and set it there as well. There isn't a right way to do it. And that's the main message I want to push here. This does not have to be a grand practice. Small steps is all we need to take.
Yeah, good point. Good point. So like, I wear an Apple Watch, and that reminds me occasionally, like, take a mindful minute, and it will, for the Apple. I'm sure a lot of the smartwatches do this. And you just, for a minute, it has this visual, and I just follow it, breathe in, breathe out. So I'll do that between clients sometimes, just to kind of catch my breath and calm myself a bit, and that can make a big difference. Just 1 minute, And the other thing I'll share is Eric Cooper's, he shared his story on my podcast many years ago now. He was big into meditation, and probably still is, I guess. But I think his meditation teacher once told him, like, just sit down daily. That's your only goal. There's no time limit. Just sit down. So, and I've never really followed it, but I've always really liked that idea of, if you have a meditation cushion or you sit on a particular chair, each day, just get on that chair. And if you don't want to do it, get back up and go live your life. But you might do a minute, or you might do 10 minutes one day, but just get to the chair. Yeah. I always quite like that as a simple target.
Yeah. The Dalai Lama, I'm going to kill this quote, so forgive me if it's not perfect, but he says, everyone should meditate daily. And if you don't have time for once a day, you should do it twice.
Yeah.
And I always laugh at that, because it is so easy to say I don't have time. But when I actually hear myself saying I don't have time, it is a reminder that might be the day I do need to sit down for a minute, twice, anywhere you can. And again, you could do it. I often do a little meditation in bed. I don't have to be sitting. It might be just noticing the rise and fall of my belly for a few breaths.
Yeah, I agree. And sometimes when I get really anxious, and I tell my clients this, the first thing I do is just come to my breath.
Yeah.
Because I know I'm usually breathing from my chest and not my belly when I'm anxious. So that's the first thing, is shifting that breath.
Yeah.
And maybe just share why that's useful, belly breathing versus chest breathing.
Yeah. So the research shows that when we keep a very shallow, high level breath, which is usually up in the chest, it actually is sending a message to your brain of fight and flight and freeze, right? So we can kind of play this out. Let's say your brain has detected danger, even if it's a false alarm. Maybe you've had a false alarm set off in your brain, which naturally it will cause some shallow breathing. If you actually then hold your breath and tighten around your chest, you're actually reinforcing that and sending a message to the brain. We're moving into the sympathetic nervous system, which sort of speeds up all of our, heart rate and cortisol and all of the adrenaline that's being dumped into us. We also know that if you were to slow the breath down and actually drop down into the belly, which is where we're supposed to actually breathe from, that actually has a way of slowing down the nervous system, right? Putting a little bit of the brakes on it. And that can be very helpful for us just to sort of get connected back to the prefrontal cortex, the part of the brain that actually can think clearly, make good decisions, return back to some of the skills that maybe you've talked about in therapy. It just allows that connection to happen a little easier. Not to say that you're going to get rid of your anxiety. Again, I really want to be careful of that, because I think that gets talked about too much, especially on social media, of, just breathe and your anxiety will go away. I think it takes, like, for me, I always say it just sort of takes the top off of it. I still have to work through my anxiety, but it allows me to drop into that, again, that prefrontal cortex where I can actually think a little clearer, and that nervous system slows down just a little bit.
I agree. That's exactly the same reason I do it. It's like fighting a tiger, right? If you've got to fight a tiger, it's better to do it with your eyes open than your eyes closed. Yeah. And just taking those few breaths into my belly just allows me to think, okay, what's the next step? Maybe it's using my senses. Maybe it's refocusing and back on something. Or maybe even leaning into it from like an exposure point of view. But
yeah. I'll just tell a quick story, and I don't know if this is helpful. And again, no, you guys don't need to even consider this, but after I got diagnosed with postural orthostatic tachycardic syndrome a couple of years ago, and it causes these really strong adrenaline surges, they're called. So your brain will just like dump a bunch of adrenaline, which makes you think you're having a panic attack, but you're actually not. But in that moment, it feels like it, your heart's racing and your brain's like you're so hyper aware. And so I had to go through what's called heart rate variability training, which is a 40-minute breath work every day for 10 weeks. I did not want to do this. And I love meditation, but I was very mad that I had to do this. But the cool thing the thing that I learned the most from that is my breath is something I have anytime I want. And I've actually now trained myself to be able to regulate pretty well just through a breath, through a series of breaths. Again, I'm not saying it will take anxiety away, but there is a great sense of comfort in knowing that that's a tool that's there for me anytime I need it. It doesn't even matter what it is. It's been incredibly helpful to be like, oh, I can return to my breath. That's something that's always there for me. And I've trained enough to where now it's a habit.
Good point. Good point. Yeah, that's it. So let's talk about your meditation vault.
Right. Well, first, before I do that, can I just give a couple of maybe points? Because I really want to make sure folks with OCD, do you mind, is a couple of things I would want you to think about. We did in the meditation, but I want you to keep in mind. I want to give as much help as I can. Is number one, go in knowing that your intrusive thoughts will show up. So important. Just know that they'll be there and know that that's not your fault. And it's not proof that you're bad at this. The second piece is go in with a degree of inviting them in so that you can learn to have a different reaction. That's where the beauty is, that you can learn to have a different reaction. It takes time and it is some work, but it is, of all the practices, probably the one that I have found to sort of supercharge people's treatment really well is when they actually, it's sort of like when we do exposures, we're doing that not just to scare the what out of you. We're doing it so you have an opportunity to practice response prevention. And that's what meditation does as well. The third thing to remember here is there is no right way to do it. It is okay if your meditation today was terrible and you did very little success. You had very little success with it. That's not a bad meditation. That's just information and data for next time. And you will have bad days. I have bad days of meditation and we have good days. So I just wanted to offer those things to people because I think those are the things that really get people stuck. And they're like, I don't want to do this. It's too hard. And it brings up too much self-judgment for me. I always say, let's just let it be messy and bumpy. So I hope that's helpful for people because I think they're one of the biggest things that can get in the way.
Absolutely. So yeah, your vault or course, and why call it a vault actually?
So this sort of came out of a client's sort of suggestion. Several years ago, a client of mine who really genuinely wanted to learn meditation was getting really discouraged because of the ones she found on YouTube or on some of the apps. She just felt like every time she did them, her OCD would find a way to ruin it for her, tell her she's doing it wrong, tell her that, they kept telling her to relax. She kept having more intrusive thoughts and feeling less relaxed. So she kept saying, somebody needs to make a vault of meditations for people with OCD and have it be about specifically intrusive thoughts and urges to do compulsions and all the stuff that comes up with that. It's taken me several years to get around to it, but I finally, after 8 months, it took way longer than I thought it would. Here I was thinking I could whack it out in a couple of months, but no, it took me forever. It is a vault of 28 meditations. There are 5 different vaults within the vault. We call it the meditation vault. I don't know why I call it a vault. That's what she told me to call it. So that's what I called it. One is for anxiety and intrusive thoughts. There is a specific meditations for anxiety, OCD, health anxiety, social anxiety, panic, scary thoughts, and so forth. The next vault is on motivation. A lot of people were saying, I need, when they listen to some of the work that I do, they're like, I feel very motivated by what you're saying. So it's a lot of guided meditations that are trying to motivate them to do the hard thing and encourage them to do the hard thing. There's another vault about strong emotions. Because some people, there's actually a phenomenon where some people who meditate actually experience heightened anxiety when they meditate. And so we talk about that. And then there's one for sleep and well-being, because so many people, but the one I really love, and I will mention this, is there is a meditation called How to Meditate When You Don't Want to Meditate. And the whole point of it is you can still meditate while noticing how much you hate it. That's still meditating, as long as you're still bringing your attention back to a focal point. So again, I just wanted, the vault is really there to help encourage people in recovery and to be a place where they can start playing around with meditation in a way that's OCD informed.
Yeah, I love that. Awesome. Well, yeah, I'll put the link in the show notes if anyone wants to check it out. And yeah, I mean, obviously you gave us a taster and I appreciated that. So hopefully that inspired some people. So the question I wanted to ask you is, I usually do like the 20-year-old self question, or I change the age sometimes, but if you could pick up the phone and call the last year's version of you, so 2022, what would you tell her? What does she need to hear?
Oh, loaded question. I have so many things to say. I've had a massive year of growth through some pretty hard stuff. What would I tell last year's me? I wasn't prepared, so forgive me still. Okay. It's not something I would tell myself, if I can be difficult. This last year have been on a journey of learning how to feel my feelings, which sounds funny because I've been talking about feeling feelings for the last 10 years. And I thought I was really, really good at it. And it turns out I really was not. And that is because I was feeling my feelings, but in a way that was not super effective. So 2022 Kimberley, I would not say something. I would actually let them know that it's safe to feel feelings, and that if you allow them to rise and fall, they actually hurt less.
I like that. Nice. And can I just add one other question on that same question, which is, when you were going through POTS in a big way, what did she need to know?
Oh, the 2018 version of me. She needs to know that it's okay to rest. Okay. I don't believe in everything happens for a reason, but I do believe, and I don't believe there's a lesson in everything, but I do believe that there was a lesson in me getting POTS, and that was, you cannot do all the things and be all the things and still be well. And I had to learn to listen to my body. which was what made me then realize I had to listen to my feelings, and that it all kind of fell apart from there. But again, I'm grateful for it, even though it was crap. That it was so hard. I like just a few weeks ago, my husband and I were talking, and he's like, I actually really truly thought you were dying. We all did. Everyone, even the doctors could not figure out what was wrong with me. And it took that to actually get me to slow down.
Yeah, tough time. But you made it, and did learn something from it.
Again, I hate the term like that it was a gift, but it was a gift to me. I needed it. I truly did. So again, I don't want to make it sound like it was all rosy and beautiful at the end, but I am to a degree grateful for something pumping the brakes.
Yeah. No. Thank you for sharing that. So lastly, anything else you wish you could have said or shared today?
The main thing I would add is similar to your 2022 question, is really this is about, are you creating a safe place to have any thought and any feeling and any sensation and any urge, any image? And that's really the goal, right? To be able to hold space for our experience, even when it's really strong and really painful. To be able to do that is one of the most helpful skills we can learn as human beings and as adults and teens and children. So meditation is one of the ways that you can do that, and is a way that you can practice strengthening that muscle. And I promise you won't be sorry when you do practice and you do create some safety, whether that's through meditation, through your own treatment, whatever modality you're using. That is a huge part of the work that we do. And I hope that you're starting that work whenever you're ready.
Thank you. I appreciate it, Kim, and your time and sharing meditation with us. Thank you.
My pleasure. Thanks for having me. It's fun to see you again.
Thank you for listening to this week's podcast, and thank you to our Patreons who helped make this episode possible. And if you would like to find out more about Patreon and the rewards and benefits, then there will be a link in the episode description. If you enjoy the OCD Stories podcast and would like to support us with a one-time tip/donation, please go to theocdstories.com/support. All tips, no matter how large or small, are greatly appreciated. Please subscribe and rate the show wherever you listen to the podcast. And thank you to NoCD for supporting our work. If you want to find out more about NoCD, head to go.treatmyocd.com/theOCD stories or click the link in the episode description. And quick disclaimer, guys, this podcast is not therapy. It is not a replacement for therapy. Please seek treatment from a trained professional. And until we speak, take care.